Hey, Lenny.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome to episode 102 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that meets twice a month.
We like to dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the front porch.
Our book today is Isola by Allegra Goodman. This book was published just this year. Funny story. I had received an email from a publicist from the Dial Press, who's the publisher of this book, and he had pitched the idea of our reviewing this book on the podcast. And I didn't really get a chance to look into it. And then a day or two later, I'm at tennis drills, and a girlfriend of mine says, Nancy, I have a book you and Lenny have to review on your podcast. I read it while I was on vacation, and I absolutely loved it. And she tucked it into my tennis bag. As we were doing drills, I thought, what is that book? So when I had a chance to take a water break, I ran over to my bag, and I pulled the book out of the bag, and it was this book. Between the publicist and between my friend who said it is one of the best books that she's read, I knew that we had to do it on the podcast.
Well, yes. Yeah, I'm glad we selected it. We haven't read anything like this book before.
Yeah, really different.
Well, this book is set in 16th century France and was inspired by the real life of a French noblewoman. And I think listeners are going to enjoy the story that explores the very sheltered life of this young noblewoman during the Renaissance.
Yes, and the young noblewoman is our main character, Marguerite. She's been orphaned by the death of her parents. Her mother at her birth and her father when she was 3 when he was at war. She's left under the guardianship of her father's cousin, Roberval. The first paragraph of this book gives us amazing insight into Marguerite and also where she finds herself as this story opens. And it's also just beautifully written. So I want to read that first paragraph. I never knew my mother. She died the night that I was born, and so we passed each other in the dark. I love that. We passed each other in the dark. Yeah. That's amazing. She left me her name, Marguerite, and her ruby ring, but no memory of her. I did not know my father either. When I was 3 years old, he was killed fighting for the king at Pavia. Then I was rich, although I did not know it, and poor, although I did not know it. I was heir to a chateau in Périgord with its own villages, vineyards, and sunny fields, but I had no parents, aunts, or uncles living. Servants surrounded me, but I had no sisters or brothers, and so I was alone. I love how this really sets the stage about Marguerite, but also this first paragraph is such a feeling of isolation, which I felt throughout this entire book. And I was wondering, did you feel that isolation too, or is that just me?
She was isolated, but she was sheltered.
Yeah.
It was a purpose for the isolation. And I think culturally she didn't know any different. And there were certain expectations for it. But then isolation comes in a different way towards the middle to the end of the book as she is isolated by her circumstances. Mm-hmm. There's definitely isolation as a theme throughout the book. But I don't know that I would have picked the theme out like you did, Nance.
Mm-hmm. The story feels very cloistered to me. And you're right. Part of that is cultural. This is in the Renaissance in France. Noble women were kept on their own. And she's an orphan. So she's surrounded by servants, but not by relatives.
Right.
You know, the other theme I thought the book had was a sort of hopelessness. So I was interested in this Battle of Pavia. And I wondered if it was real or not. Turns out there was actually a Battle of Pavia. I'm in love with the fact that Allegra Goodman, the author, included an actual battle. Turns out it was the decisive military engagement of the war in Italy between King Francis I of France and the Habsburg Emperor Charles V. The French had 28,000 soldiers in this battle. and they are basically all annihilated.
It's hard to imagine how big the other army must have been.
Yeah, it is incredible. So it feels like Marguerite's father, he was a nobleman, he was rich, obviously. He dies in this hopeless battle, and that detail imbued the whole story with hopelessness. Did you think there was a theme of hopelessness?
Not hopelessness. I really saw her struggling with powerlessness and trying to figure out how she should navigate her different situations based on her class, her circumstances, and the people around her. In a powerless situation, she is trying to find where her power is, where her voice is, how to use those so that she isn't powerless. And she really uses the women around her to help her navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very rich girl. She has noble birth, but she has no rights. And she loses even more rights as she becomes destitute and certain situations happen in her life. But I didn't feel the hopelessness from her perspective. I saw her as trying to figure out where are the strings and what do I need to pull?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think powerlessness captures what she was facing. And you're exactly right that we meet her when she's 8, I think, and she's trying different avenues to figure out how she can have more agency in her life. And sometimes she goes along with what her nurse and her tutors are telling her. Sometimes she goes against it. Sometimes she's a little impetuous because she's kind of sassy. Sometimes she just rebels. It really is not until the end of the book where she really figures out the levers that will work so that she can create the life that she wants.
Right. Well, I mean, we do catch her at a child.
Well,
And
right.
we leave her as a woman.
Young woman, though.
Yeah, a young woman who's grown a lot, let's just say.
She's been through a lot.
She has been through a lot.
I was really interested in these excerpts that started each section of the book. So there are these interesting bits of advice, and they are attributed to Anne of France, and they come from a book called Lessons for My Daughter. So once again, I thought, now, is that really a book, or is it a fictitious book that serves this narrative? Turns out it's an actual book. You can get it on Amazon.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was truly written by a woman whose name was Anne of France. And this book probably would have been written just a couple years before Marguerite is born, given the lifespan of Anne of France. Anne was a noblewoman. She was the daughter of King Louis the 11th, and she was the sister of Charles the 8th. So her father is a king, her brother is a king. She was one of the most powerful women of her time. So she is writing this advice to her daughter from a position of power, but her advice shows what little power women had. And now I'm going to quote one of the little excerpts that starts one of the sections. This is how her daughter can navigate the world. And this is what she says. Because of their weak feminine nature, it is especially important for all gentlewomen desiring a good reputation to be so modest and afraid of error that they do not take a single step unless they must, and that compassed by reason. They behave with perfect delicacy. Oh, don't take a single step unless you have to. And
Yeah.
I mean, the other quotes are similar about modesty, humbleness. There is nothing in here about you might have some good ideas and you should make them known, or you should stand up for yourself. No, in Renaissance France, noble women basically be quiet, don't get in the way, serve other people, and
have babies.
Have babies. Yeah, I guess so. So Marguerite's nurse and later her tutor and her tutor's daughter try to help Marguerite learn these lessons of how to be a gentlewoman. So how do you think this advice worked out in her meetings with Roberval, her guardian?
Well, her guardian is a horrible guardian.
Turns out, yeah.
He's miserable, and he has all the power. Like any dictator that I'm aware of, he abuses his power, and she is completely at his mercy.
Yep.
Because she has these two women who are older than her and more knowledgeable, they are trying to teach her how to be a gentlewoman.
Yeah.
They are coming at a place of lower status than what Marguerite has.
True.
And so they see things from a different perspective of, oh, these are how the noble women act, and this is your role. And they are trying to give her advice. However, at some point, she has to kind of know, like, these are my servants. These people have lower station than I do. And I'm a noble woman, so this is what I'm going to say. And she doesn't have a mom around to tell her, you know?
Yeah.
So she's, again, navigating, trying to figure it out. Sometimes she falls on her face, but
yeah.
In that kind of miserable situation, I don't blame her. Yeah. I don't blame her for saying what she needs or what she thinks. Of course.
Here's the thing. Her guardian has basically taken all of her money and funded these unsuccessful voyages to the New World, to New France, Canada, basically. She starts out living in the chateau, but then he rents the chateau to another family, and she has to live in this cold tower, and she has no money, basically. No dresses, barely enough for food, it seems like. So he comes on a very infrequent trip, and the nurse and the tutor are like, whatever you do, don't ask him for money. And she's like, we need money.
We have nothing.
We have nothing. I just think that advice, while maybe appropriate for a gentlewoman, she's not in a gentlewoman situation, really.
No, she isn't. And she doesn't have a guardian that is providing those.
Right.
So the women around her might be thinking, oh, well, noble women don't ask for money. She is not like anybody that should be in that situation.
Right.
She should be attended to. She should be a kept woman. She shouldn't have to ask for money because it should be readily available to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she should have all her needs met. But she doesn't. I don't blame the women around her. They believe they're giving her solid advice. And I believe by reading it, they probably are giving her good advice.
For most women at the time.
Yeah. So they're not steering her wrong. They care about her. Hey, they care about their own livelihoods too. I mean, the nurse is dependent on Marguerite.
Yeah.
And so she knows if Marguerite's successful and she can eat, then I'm going to eat too. And I am going to be successful and I'm going to have a home. If Marguerite blows this, I have nothing. So she's completely devoted to her, and her livelihood depends on Marguerite's ability to be a gentlewoman, right. Do the right thing.
Right. And the tutor and her daughter also. They like Marguerite a lot. They'd like to stay with Marguerite, but when it becomes clear Marguerite's star is not rising, it's falling, they have to make other plans for themselves also.
Yeah. Scary situation.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, I feel bad for them.
So every good story needs an antagonist. So as I got into the first couple pages of this story, I was trying to figure out who is going to be the antagonist. And honestly, at first I thought it was Marguerite's nurse, Damienne, because she clearly is thinking that Marguerite is not up to the task of being a noble woman. Marguerite's mother always did everything better because the nurse was Marguerite's mother's nurse as well. Marguerite's mother was more beautiful, more pious, more everything. Her father was a noble man. Marguerite is not living up to this at all. And so I thought maybe this nurse was going to be the one who is oppressing her. Turns out this nurse is as loyal a person as you would want, and truly is, from her very pure heart, trying to teach Marguerite how to live from her own perspective. Roberval, obviously, he is the guardian and he is her main antagonist. Damienne, one of the reasons I thought maybe she was going to be the antagonist, because she really uses God as a cudgel sometimes, almost like God wants you to do this. God wants you to do that. God expects this of you. Here are the rituals you need to follow to please God. And that always makes me very uncomfortable. I think Marguerite does believe in God, but she doesn't always think that he's a merciful God, and certainly not a loving God. So I thought it was an interesting representation of faith. The nurse is very pure, childlike faith. Even Auguste, who becomes Marguerite's love interest, has a very strong faith. Marguerite, she struggles. What did you think about the portrayal of faith in this book?
There's cultural components, as I think anybody reads the Bible. You come at life and advice and what the Bible's saying from your own cultural perspective. So I took a lot of that as, oh, that must have been the going theme of who they thought God was at that time or was happening in their environment. I didn't think very deeply of that. But what I thought of was how faith, again, the sense of self-advocacy and overcoming powerlessness, that having God on your side makes you feel less powerless because you have somebody who's looking out for your best interests and absolutely loves you and is devoted towards you. So they were seeking to please God, but also to appeal to God to help them in their circumstances and feel like they have some advocacy, or I guess agency is the word you used. And I like that word in this story because she didn't have much of that. I don't know that we know much about her mother's faith.
She was pious. She was better at her prayers. I mean, according to Damienne.
That nurse was most likely there at the labor and delivery and most likely realized what was happening and made an oath right then and there that she was going to raise this child. And if faith was important to her mother, she was going to try to instill that with Marguerite. Her faith, that was personal for her too.
Definitely.
And so I think she was sharing her faith with Marguerite to help her along. That's interesting that you would bring, of everything that you wanted to talk about, the faith journey, because I mean, it was certainly throughout the book, but I kind of thought there's a big cultural component to that too. You know, I don't know much about France and I don't know about the Renaissance period as much as you do. I appreciate your French though, Nancy, because you're nailing all of these very hard words. And when I was reading, it was like, okay, her name is Demi, because I don't know how to say that. That's Robbie for me. You know, I don't know how to say these words in France, but I'm interested in what your thought was about how faith was represented in the story.
What I loved about how faith was represented is that, as you said, it is throughout the book. And I do think faith is something that people think about throughout their lives, whether you're a person of faith or a person who does not have faith. Things happen in your life and it is a cause for reconsideration. Okay, now what do I think? Now what do I see? How does this comport with how I thought things would go? Do my beliefs still stand up? And that's how faith is represented in this book, which I really like. Marguerite's faith. Damienne, she's almost childlike in her faith. She just believes.
Right.
This is what we believe. This is what we do. Don't question, don't doubt. But Marguerite, every step along the way, she's really thinking about what this means in terms of her faith. What I love is her skepticism, because she's hearing from her nurse, God is good if you do these rituals, because this would have been Catholic France at the time. If you do these rituals, God will take care of you. Well, I'll tell you what, Marguerite is a little skeptical because God has not taken care of her. Her mother and her father have been taken away from her. She has this guardian who is not taking care of her, and things get worse for her. She thinks, well, is this because I'm not faithful enough? Is this God getting back at me for my lack of faith? Just the way she struggles with it. And it's not a main theme in the book, but it is a constant theme. And I just love that representation. I thought it was handled so well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about a different aspect of this book. As Marguerite is learning from the tutor and kind of learning from the daughter too, because Claire, the daughter, she does kind of have a gentle spirit.
She does. She's very sweet and also very pious.
Yeah. So that's something to hate, I think, a little bit as a little girl. Like, there's the goody two-shoe over there, she's perfect and I'm floundering.
Oh, she can embroider well.
Yes. Okay. But they do develop a beautiful relationship, don't they? And I'm just so thankful that Marguerite finally has a friend.
Yes.
And the tutor, the mom, reads to them this book on all these female heroines from all of these stories, And I don't know that Claire sees herself as a heroine, but there's a part of Marguerite that is enthralled by these women who rise up and conquer and overcome and do all these wonderful things.
Yeah, saints and queens. And
so what did you think of that particular addition to the book?
So once again, I had to see, is this a real thing? Turns out this book, The City of Ladies, is an actual book.
Really?
Yes.
This author's done her work.
She has. It's so fun the way she has taken these historically accurate aspects of the culture and woven them into this book. What I really liked about this City of Ladies book, this Anne of France, advice to my daughters, what I like about the tutor and her daughter Claire and Damienne, these are all women taking care of other women in a culture where women have no power.
Right.
I think it would be so easy to have the women fighting each other, because if you're in a situation where you have no power, you can definitely have the situation where you're stepping on one another to try to get at least a modicum of power over others, or trying to ingratiate yourself into the kindness of someone with power. But that's not where Allegra Goodman goes with this book. And I love that about this book. With their very limited ability to help one another, they are helping one another the best they can. And I just thought that was beautiful.
I kind of looked at it a little, not quite like how you did, Nancy.
Okay.
I mean, that's beautiful what you said. And there is an element of what you're saying, but I really saw classism as a major theme in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so she keeps Claire, her daughter, in line. They know their position.
They're the tutor and the daughter, and that's your role.
That's it. Damienne, she's not always kind.
No.
A little bit of difference here. She's raising this girl because I think she probably loved her mother. So there was parts of me, maybe more than you, that were realizing they're all surviving under a powerless situation by figuring this out, what their role is. I need this person to be successful because that helps me out.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of looked at the book more that way.
But I would say there was a real benevolence in the relationship between Marguerite and her tutor and tutor's daughter Claire and her nurse. There was a benevolence, there was an affection that they all held, even a love. It wasn't just utilitarian. It wasn't just instrumental. There were some real feelings there.
I think there were some real feelings there, but the story is through Marguerite's eyes.
Yeah.
And so she isn't always aware. Like at one time she says, oh, the nurse is devoted to me. Becomes more real to her that I've only been thinking of myself. I haven't been thinking about my nurse because that was never her role. The nurse was taking care of her.
Right.
The nurse was making sure she had enough food and she was taken care of. And was she behaving herself?
Mm-hmm.
Marguerite wasn't at all concerned about the other person. So as we're reading this story, we're seeing it through Marguerite's eyes. And so I don't know that benevolence and the kindness, I do believe the two girls became good friends. That's a lovely part of the story. I really like that. And I think the tutor is a lovely woman too. But do you remember, because you asked me to watch this is decades ago, Nancy, and you're not going to remember this.
Okay.
But there was a show on PBS about, I'm going to say it was England, and it was the ruler of a castle. And, you know, it's one of these real life, what do we call those?
Reality series.
Reality series.
I totally remember this. It was one of the first reality series on TV. This was before any commercial reality series. PBS.
And it was PBS, so it was the real deal.
PBS had several reality series where who knows what they were thinking. They said, let's take modern day people and we are going to cast them as the servants and the nobles in an English castle and see, can people with modern day sensibilities live in a way that the castle will run well and that they will survive. I do remember that. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason that I really liked the classism as described there, but the only person happy in all of that thing was the White King.
Yep.
The wife wasn't happy.
Nope.
She was powerless. She had to keep leaving the castle to go on trips and inviting people into the castle to talk to her.
Yeah.
None of the servants were happy.
No.
But from the king's perspective, he did not realize that. He didn't realize that, oh, I'm bringing home a pheasant. And he's throwing it at the cook. And the cook's like, what am I supposed to do with this? I just killed the sheep out back and I did that. And now he wants me to cook this. Is this supposed to be for supper? This wasn't on the menu. I need 3 hours to cook this pheasant. And he's walking in the door now. The king is oblivious to this.
Yeah.
So when I look at Marguerite, I see a woman that might be oblivious as to the tutor and her job and the amount of power that she has there, thinking all these people are here, they help me and everything, but a little bit blind to maybe why. So I guess I was a little bit more skeptical to all of that women love than you were.
I absolutely agree with you that Marguerite was blind because of her position. She's very self-involved and she's a young girl.
Yeah.
All she really thinks about is herself. And I did like that part of the book where they're in the cave, abandoned on the island. It's just the two of them now. And I think Marguerite says something like, you know, I wish I had brothers or sisters or something. And Damien says, I had 5 brothers and 2 sisters. And Marguerite is like, what? Yeah. Like she had never considered that Damien had a family and that she left that family. In fact, had to leave that family in order to get a job. And that meant she never saw her family again. Never dawned on her.
Yeah, that was the way things were.
Right.
And Damien, of anybody, wanted to keep that distance between them in a lot of ways. She'd be like, no. You're not going on the island and doing some fishing. He's going to do the fishing. And no, you're not going to clean out the cave. I'm sweeping the cave. You're to sit over there on that rock and relax.
And even earlier in the story, Damien is saying, do not be gossiping with the maids. That is not appropriate. And turns out Damien is right. She cannot trust the maids because the maids work for Roberval.
Yeah. And she knew that those maids are going to use what little power they have to try to elevate their position because they're hungry too.
That's right.
And miserable.
And poor Alice, the maid, she just wants to get married, but she doesn't have the money to get married. So what's she going to do when she's entrusted with a secret note? She's going to figure out a way to make some money.
Yeah. We got a lot of poor people who are in, like I said, the White King in the castle's the only one who's really happy.
I was reading something about Renaissance France, and I think something like 98% of the people were peasants.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Everyone was a peasant.
Sure.
There were a very, very few people who weren't peasants. And that would include merchants and pastors and people like that. But most people, absolute poverty, peasants.
Yeah, and the king can tax you whatever he wants to.
I thought the end of the story where it's the king's sister who intervenes on Marguerite's behalf, I thought that was a beautiful touch. And I wondered if it was a little nod to Anne of France, who was the daughter and sister of a king. That it's the king's sister who ultimately is one with enough power that she can overrule Roberval and give Marguerite at least a better life. Marguerite is never going to be the wealthy noblewoman that she once was, but a life that she has some ability to shape her own future.
And although I didn't really see it until you talked about it, I'm wondering too if it's that female helping female.
Exactly.
We don't talk to the men.
Right.
But we have pathways to each other.
Yeah.
Where we can connect, we can help, we can support. And that women helping women theme that you identified early definitely was there at the end. But Marguerite had to be smart in how she did it and how she approached it.
She still had to be smart because we're still talking about a monarchy and we're talking about absolute power. With the snap of a fingers, you might be granted something or something might be taken away from you.
And she experiences all of that.
She really does.
Yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to talk about, I love the detail of the bear claw, which is she cut that claw out of a bear on the island who tried to attack her. Well, who did attack her. And she carries it with her from then on, which I thought was a symbol of her resilience and overcoming the odds. What did you think about that bear claw?
Yeah, and to make the story real, when I thought of some of the symbolism in the books, they're almost this grounding. I'm really into like grounding techniques and grounding imagery and using those things to help you to be present and to use those things to help you to reduce anxiety and all of that. I think the bear claw helped her to really remember, look, this is what I went to and I killed this thing. And I don't ever want to forget that I was stuck on that island and I had to use a gun and I survived it. And here's my proof.
Yeah.
The other symbolisms that were there, like the ring that she had from her mother and the ring that she got from Claire. Again, I saw those more of grounding. Like, here's my ring from my mom. My mom was a noblewoman. This is my heritage. This is in my blood. But this is where I came from. And this is very important to me. And Claire and her switch these rings to show their friendship. I mean, this is so, so important. They don't have anything.
No.
All she has is the clothes on her back and this ring. And she gives that to Claire. And then she gets something very important too. But then she loses it.
Yes.
That's like a very low point in the book. this friendship that is so near, these people who have been supportive of me, all of this is gone. So I looked at those symbolisms more as sort of this foundation of strength or grounding. Did you take it a different way, Nance?
Well, I think that that's the power of symbols, that they carry so much meaning. But I think you absolutely articulated it. I think the rings were a very important symbol along with the bear claw. I'm trying to remember if there were any other symbols that really stood out. Oh, there was there was that little box that Roberval had.
Oh, yeah.
He was always taking money out of, and it just almost was like an enchanted box for her.
I was going to say there's a mystery about that.
It just seemed so beautiful to Marguerite. Eventually, the box just disappears.
Yeah, it's a mysterious box. She doesn't know. Are those deeds to properties in there? Is there money associated? It's that whole mystery of, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Are we in debt? Is the queen taking care of this trip? Is this coming out of my inheritance, these boats? Like, the money is not available and she knows nothing. So I think that was sort of the mysterious thing, is that I don't know about my own money.
Right.
I think the father did a very poor job of picking out the guardian.
He should have never picked his cousin as a guardian.
No.
Neglectful is the nicest thing you could say, but he basically robbed her blind.
Agreed.
Overall, how did you like the book?
Well, I liked it. And I liked the ending. Nance, I have to have a happy ending. I mean, we got to get off the island. We got to get back to people that love us and care about us. And we got to find a way out of this. So thank you to Allegra for giving us not a rosy. I don't need rosy.
Yeah, no, it's not
rosy.
No.
We don't need to do Hollywood. But we need to get off of that island and we need to get back to a decent life. Mm-hmm. And I thought the arc of the character came through loud and strong.
Yeah.
That now we don't have a little pampered girl. We have a woman who has figured out how to have a voice, an agency, and make some decisions for herself. Bravo to her. And that life and in that time to be able to do what she did.
Yeah, I really like the book. I agree with what you said at the beginning. This is just a very different book than we've read before. It reminded me a little bit, though, of The Marriage Portrait that we read that was set in northern Italy. Also, Renaissance era women have very little power. This also had this really interesting adventure to New France / Canada, and this time on a deserted island. Yeah, I just thought it was enchanting, really.
I'm glad she fell in love, too. I always like a good love story.
Well, it was a good love story, but it was a tragic love story. So what did you think about the tragedy of the love story? You could live with that?
Yeah, I can, because she fell in love. You should fall in love in life. And she knew what love was. She knew what devotion was.
And he seemed like a really nice
He seemed like
man.
A really nice person. Yeah. He was devoted to her. He showed her love. She didn't know the love of a father. She didn't know a brother. Mm-hmm. So this is a male that came into her life that was kind to her. Mm-hmm. I thought their love story was beautiful. I think that he loved her probably more than she probably loved him, but she didn't really know what love was. She was still young and she was naive about a lot of things, but I liked that part of the story. It just filled out a part of her personality and a part of her essence as a woman.
Well, good. It'll be exciting to talk to the author our next episode.
Now that you have filled me in on all the research she has done, oh my goodness gracious. Yeah. That's brought out a whole new level of respect for her, for not only writing this really amazing novel, but absolutely bringing in some real life cultural components to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, stop by the front porch for our next episode when we welcome the author of Isola, Allegra Goodman, to our front porch.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Our website is frontporchbookclub.com.
Our episodes come out twice a month on the first and third Wednesday of every month.
See you next time, Lenny.
See you, Nance.